So that Super Mario RPG remake got announced a few months ago, and some people were pretty excited for it. In fact, ever since that trailer dropped, I've seen pretty much nothing but excitement about it, which is great to see as a longtime fan of the original. However, amidst all the hype, I have seen a handful of people wondering just what all the fuss is about. Maybe they never played Mario RPG, or maybe they did and just never got the appeal of it. What's got all these grown-ass men screaming their heads off over a nearly 3-decade-old game? Why this game? While I mostly wrote off these comments as just a bunch of Zoomers not knowing what's good in the world, they got me thinking, what do I like about Super Mario RPG? It seems like a silly question. For one of my favorite games, it should be easy to answer, but the more I pondered it, the more I realized I didn't have a satisfying answer for it. It feels like I've liked Mario RPG for as long as I've been alive, and eventually, I just took for granted that I liked the game without really considering why. Did the mid-2000s internet gaslight me into liking the game before I even played it? Well, maybe, but I'd like to think there's a little more to it than that. So I decided to boot the game up one more time before the remake's out to find what makes it hold up so well all these years later. I'm not going to go through the whole game chronologically since that'd take way too long and it'd also be really lazy on my part. This ain't your grandpa's retrospective! I'll also try to avoid saying stuff like, timed hits are a brilliant mechanic that makes the game way more fun than those other boring RPGs that were too hard for our stupid American brain! You've heard this stuff before. Instead, I'm going to go over specific aspects of the game that, on my most recent playthrough, stood out to me as reasons to come back to it. Hopefully it'll be a little more cohesive than... Yeah. This video assumes no level of familiarity with the game, so as long as you know who this guy and this guy are, you'll probably be fine. If you don't sweat it, this game's really not that complicated. For my sake and yours, let's find out what makes Super Mario RPG special. Where to start with a game so multifaceted as this? Well, I guess there's no better place than the game's most relevant aspect, its legacy. Most people know this story, so I'll keep this part short. Super Mario RPG was developed in the mid-90s as a collaboration between Nintendo and Square, two industry titans that are still standing tall to this day. Square were desperate back then to market their games to a Western audience, and thus approached Nintendo with the idea of putting Mario in an RPG. A novel idea at the time, the end result was sort of a stripped-down version of other Square RPGs. I mean, the title says it all. It's a Mario RPG. The numbers are smaller, the equipment scales mostly linearly, and aside from using dark magic, there's relatively little build customization. No matter how you equip your party, Mario's gonna be your fighter, Mallow's gonna be your black mage, Bowser's gonna be your tank, Peach is gonna be your healer, and Gino's gonna be freaking awesome. Seriously, there's a reason everyone likes this guy so much. This simplicity makes the game an excellent gateway RPG for those who aren't familiar with the genre without sacrificing too much of the depth that makes RPGs fun. Mechanics like guarding and timed hits add to the game's action-oriented feel that those coming in from other Mario games will be more familiar with. Not all attacks are blockable, but most regular ones are, and if you time your block just right, you can even reduce damage to 0, adding a new layer of skill expression most RPGs don't have. Being able to outright avoid damage is such a cool idea for an RPG, and it's an idea that'd be carried over into other games inspired by this one. Similarly, your attack damage varies not based on RNG, but by how tight your timing is, which simulates the randomness inherent to RPGs without actually being random. Or maybe I'm just bad at the game after not playing it in years. Along with being the game that practically introduced a generation of American kids to RPGs, Super Mario RPG marked a lot of firsts in the Mario series. For instance, it was the first Mario game to have a story more involved than the standard Bowser kidnaps Peach fare. Up to this point, the most story-driven Mario game might have been like, Mario is missing, or Hotel Mario. Story exists as an excuse in most Mario games, and while that's not exactly a bad thing, it left room for this game to expand the series' characterization and world building. For the first time, Mario's world feels like a real lived-in place that doesn't exist purely for the little Italian plumber to jump through. Places like Nimbus Land, Tadpole Pond, and Moleville introduce new races to the Mushroom Kingdom that feel believably Mario, inhabited by NPCs with quirky dialogue that implies a life and world beyond what you see in the game. This is admittedly pretty standard stuff as far as RPGs, or even story-driven games in general, but for Super Goddamn Mario, this sort of stuff was unheard of back in '96. RPG was also the game to establish personalities for existing characters that continue to be carried over to this day. In previous portrayals of the character, Bowser was just kind of a tough guy who would occasionally say something mean, but in RPG, he's an insecure meathead who writes haikus about how misunderstood he is. He talks a big game to others, but on the inside, he's just a big sensitive jerk who wants his house back. This goofier, hammed-up take on the Koopa King has since been adopted and expanded by other games in the Mario series. So if you love RPG Bowser as much as I do, you know who to thank. While RPG wasn't the first time we saw Princess Peach in a more adventurous role, you can see elements of the character she'd become in games like Thousand Year Door and Super Paper Mario here. She's a benevolent ruler who's concerned with the greater good, but she can get mad when you push her buttons. Despite its dormancy for the greater part of the past 3 decades, Mario RPG continues to live on through the enduring characterization of folks like Bowser and Peach. Let's see, other firsts. Oh, apparently SMRPG was the first Mario game to have female Toads. That's something, I guess. This admittedly has little to do with the game itself, but I think it's worth noting how Mario RPG continues to live on in terms of its modern presence. It's kind of beautiful to think about how each generation since the game's release has grown up with it in a different way. 90s kids had the original release, 2000s kids had the Wii Virtual Console and the plethora of early internet fan content about it, 2010s kids had the Wii U release and technically the SNES Classic, which is what I recorded my footage on, hence the tacky curtains on the side of the screen, and the current generation will get to experience this gem for the first time on the Nintendo Switch. Even if you haven't played the game, Super Mario RPG has permeated the gaming zeitgeist in a way few standalone games do. If you're watching this video, I don't think I need to tell you how well regarded of a game it is. Hell, you've probably heard music from this game while watching your favorite YouTuber, and you might not have even realized it. Super Mario RPG is one of the greatest examples of a game's community keeping it alive through years of irrelevancy, and while you can argue that's beyond the scope of a video like this, I'd argue it speaks to the game's stature in the modern era. But for how popular SMRPG is, references to it in future Mario games, or even Nintendo in general, are few and far between. This can partially be chalked up to the game's awkward legal status, and Square seemingly came away with all the original characters and locations from RPG, but even parts of the game Nintendo does have control over rarely appear outside of it. Seriously, there is so few references to this game throughout the Mario series, I can fit them all in this screenshot. Here are some of my favorites. Fortune Street, another game developed by Square Enix, bafflingly features one of the only official remixes of a Mario RPG song with its rendition of Hello Happy Kingdom. Despite this, absolutely nothing else from the game even shows up in it, despite Geno and Mallow being right there. Bowser's Keep can be seen in the background of one of the courts in Mario Power Tennis, appearing the exact same in that game as it does in Mario RPG. It bears an even closer resemblance on the world map from specifically the Nintendo Puzzle Collection release of Yoshi's Cookie, complete with the sword that looks almost identical to Exor. Yes, my knowledge of this game is that granular. Frog Fuchsia's only appearance outside this game is in a 2006 Scholastic book, which, how the hell did they even do that? I think you get the idea. Even though everyone seems to love it, SMRPG is treated by both of its parents as the estranged, awkward stepson who didn't do anything wrong, they just don't think about him much, even at weddings and funerals. In a series as heavily syndicated and self-referential as Mario, a game that stands on its own as a breath of fresh air and contributes to the game's hidden gem status. Maybe it's just me being a hipster, but in my book, it's just another one of those things that makes Mario RPG feel special. As much as I do enjoy these curiosities, I wanted to keep this part of the video short. While this game undeniably broke new ground in its day, what made it impressive in the 90s clearly isn't what makes it impressive today. Right? I'd like to delve a bit deeper into what makes Super Mario RPG worth playing in the year of our Lord current year. So, let's get into some memorable aspects of the game itself, such as its character. Not characters, though they're certainly a part of it. You've got your essentials, of course, like Mario, Peach, Yoshi, and Bowser, but RPG would truthfully be little without the host of funky faces it brought to the Mushroom Kingdom. There's Mallow, the first partner Mario meets on his journey, a fluffy little cloud who claims to be a frog even though he can't jump to save his life. He's kind of a joke early on, being a bit of a crybaby and having pathetic stats, but as the game progresses, he grows both in strength and maturity. He's one of the few characters in any Mario game with an honest-to-God arc, and it has a satisfying payoff too. And of course, there's Geno, a character people recognize more as a potential Smash fighter than for the game he's from. A lot of people misconstrue Geno as this edgy badass who never emotes in the face of anything, when in reality, he's a massive dork in a superhero's body. The first thing he does when he wakes up is slam headfirst directly into a flight of stairs. He tries pulling the stoic hero shtick with Bowyer, but as soon as he starts firing on him, he completely loses his cool. When you go to fight the final boss, Geno's idea of a cool opener is, yo, Smithy. How can you take this seriously? That's not to say Geno isn't cool, though. He is genuinely the sickest dude around, narratively and in gameplay. He's a spirit sent from the Star Road, a wish-granting haven that has been shattered by the evil Smithy gang. In order to retrieve the titular 7 star pieces, he inhabits a doll with some exorbitant firepower and becomes Geno, a magic-slinging beast of a fighter armed with guns, cannons, and rocket fists. And you guys wonder why people want him in Smash so bad. Along with its cast of main characters, Super Mario RPG features one of the strongest supporting casts of any Mario game, with a menagerie of weird side characters wholly unique to it. Some of them are overtly based on existing characters, such as Boshi, this frat boy Yoshi who monopolizes the races on Yoster Isle before Mario and Yoshi kick his ass. Others are entirely original, such as Booster, who I can best describe as equal parts innocent child and entitled neckbeard. He lives in a whimsical tower of amusement that he inherited through generations of wealthy beatniks, bikers, and hipsters. He tries to marry Peach when she lands on his balcony, but he's just kind of a goofball who you get the feeling poses no real threat. There's Johnny, a fearsome yet honorable pirate who really deserved more screen time. He guards the 5th star piece inside a sunken ship, and if you take out all his minions, he challenges Mario to a one-on-one that's actually pretty tough. A lot of people expected him to join the party at some point, and while I personally never felt that way, he's really cool and I do wish we got to see more of him. Probably my favorite one-off from this game who nobody talks about is Punchinello, this weirdo who lives in a cave, throws bombs around, and has an obsession with being famous. He exists for all of 5 minutes and barely does anything, but I don't care, I just think he's funny. You're famous to me, pal. And of course, there's the Smithy Gang, an extra-dimensional band of villains who all take after some sort of weapon. Bowyer's a bow, Yardovich is a spear, the Axum Rangers, well, you know. And Mac's a— okay, we gotta talk. Is this Mac, or is this Mac? As a kid, I thought this was Mac because of the big angry eyes, but now that I'm older, it looks like this is Mac? But if that's the case, what's this thing? Is it also Mac? Are they both Mac? Are neither of them Mac? Is Mac used to refer to them as a unit and they each have names of their own? So many questions that the remake will definitely answer. Aside from its colorful cast, Mario RPG has quite a unique vibe even from the other Mario RPGs. I'm mainly speaking as a filthy American here since I played the game in English. In this regard, it owes its distinct flavor to the one and only Ted Woolsey, who localized a lot of Super Nintendo Square games into English and did Super Mario RPG as his last translation job. Woolsey was known during this time for his heavy-handed approach of altering Japanese scripts to make them more accessible to Western audiences, and at least as far as Mario RPG is concerned, I think he succeeded tremendously. The script has this irreverent 90s flair that you certainly wouldn't see out of Mario these days. Name another Mario game that directly name-drops Bruce Lee. That's right, you can't! Probably the most surprising Woolseyism I found on my most recent playthrough is when you talk to this gardener in Rosetown. He wants the mythical seed and fertilizer to grow the tallest beanstalk in the world, but if you decline to give him the seed, he says, "Gals don't care for tightwads, you know?" What does that even mean? Super Mario RPG is a product of its time in the best way possible, and its weird, off-kilter writing is at times reminiscent of proudly quirky cult classics like Earthbound. This wonky spirit is hardly limited to the game's dialogue. At level 6, Mallow gets a spell called Psychopath. Weird name aside, and no doubt a Woolseyism in itself, this attack lets you see an enemy's remaining HP, and if you time it properly, get a glimpse of that enemy's thoughts. Some of these provide some actually handy insight on that enemy's weaknesses. Others have some interesting lore implications, such as the Mac clones in the factory implying that they recognize Mario from the original Mac's defeat. Most of them, though, are just sort of weird and don't make a whole lot of sense. This probably isn't a move you'll use more than a few times since it doesn't really do a whole lot, so most players won't even see how unhinged these can get. My favorite one definitely belongs to Exor, the giant sword that crashes through the sky into Bowser's Keep. Throughout the whole game, he looms over the land, providing a constant reminder of what you, the player, are fighting for. After dozens of hard-earned hours of gameplay, you eventually claw your way up to the top of Bowser's Keep and fight the sword itself. It's here that you can finally find out what this menace, this very symbol of the game's conflict, has been thinking all this time. Gotta mow the lawn soon. Okay. Speaking of enemies, Mario RPG features some rather creative names for new and old baddies. You've got your Goombas and Shy Guys and Wigglers, of course, but you've got some weird ones in there too. What's that? A Cheep Cheep? Nope, fuck you! That's a Goby! Bill Blaster? Wrong, that's Big Bertha! This game also drops the very important lore that every single green Cheep Cheep is, in fact, named Mr. Kipper! So anytime you see a green Cheep Cheep in any game, just remember, he's him. But my favorite one of these, other than my goat, comes in the form of another oddity in the Exor fight. You have to target his eyes to break his protection so you can attack the main body, but you can also target his mouth. Doing so doesn't do a whole lot other than lock off some of his spells, but if you move your little cursor down to it, you can see that the true name of Exor's powerful bottom jaw is Neo Squid. What? What is a Neo Squid? In Japanese, it's just called mouth, so this is definitely another Woolseyism, but like, is this a mistake? Did Woolsey intend for Exor's mouth to be called Neo Squid? Either way, if it's not called Neo Squid in the remake, I ain't buying, just saying. And the new enemies are just weird all around. Like, good luck telling me what this is. Or this. And good luck even trying to decipher this. Another thing I always loved about this game is how you can just make Mario a complete and total asshole. Other games after this sometimes let you pick an off-color response when talking to an NPC, but it usually doesn't amount to anything more than your partner telling you off and getting back on track. Super excited for this remake too, by the way. Mario RPG, on the other hand, gives you plenty of opportunity to make Mario the villain. One of my favorite things to do on repeat playthroughs of games is say no to things you're supposed to say yes to. Some games just force you to say yes without doing anything interesting, but the wittiest games I've played put some funny shit behind doing what you aren't supposed to. In Mario RPG, this starts as soon as you meet Mallow when he asks you for help getting his grandpa's coin back, and you can just say no. Rather than put you in an endless but thou must loop, he'll start crying again, soaking the entire town in rain, and even the fangirl next to you will call you out for being a dick. There's a pretty well-known one in Marymore where you can just keep refusing to take Peach back to the Mushroom Kingdom, and each of your partners will come out and chastise you with increasing firmness. Eventually, they'll just get fed up with your bullshit and yell at you to get on with it. One that blew my mind on my most recent playthrough was in Nimbus Land, where you need a key to get through this door, but you can just say no to the guy who has it. But you still need the key, so you talk to the guy again, and Mallow comes out to say that you do need it. But the guy's not convinced, and Mallow has to acknowledge Mario acting out of character to get the key. A whole goofy little cutscene locked behind an option most players aren't even gonna look twice at. That's the Mario RPG charm. Before we move on, I'd like to shine a light on some of the little gags that make up the spaces between on Mario's adventure. This game is packed full of silly moments, both on the main adventure and the side tangents along the way. Stuff like Mario's weird shape-shifting he does in cutscenes, or standing on this kid's head so long that Mario gets dizzy and falls off, or finding Peach's or better yet, finding Peach's while she's with you. My favorite of these is probably this block in the forest maze that you just miss. Screw off, game, I totally hit that! I won't spoil every goofy moment, since this video would be 2 hours long if I did, but every time I play this game, I find a new one that makes me smile like a kid all over again. Now, that's all well and good, but you could argue that the Mario RPGs inspired by this one inherited its charm. I disagree, since those games are a bit less overtly tongue-in-cheek than RPG, but I'd at least understand where you're coming from. That said, let's turn our attention to an area where, in my opinion, Super Mario RPG beats not only every other Mario RPG, but every other Mario game. Replay value. By design or otherwise, Super Mario RPG absolutely oozes replay value. I've played this game beginning to end more times than I've cared to count, so let that be a testament. But how can one little SNES game be so replayable? Well, there are a few things. Like any good RPG of the time, Super Mario RPG is loaded with optional content in the form of collectibles, side quests, and entire optional bosses. Things like speed climbing the cliff at Land's End for the Troopa Pin and finding the flags hidden by the 3 Musty Fears for the Ghost Medal are practically waved in front of your face, but some objectives are more obscure than that. Mario has a special move in this game called the Super Jump, a powered-up version of his jump that allows him to keep bouncing on a single target as long as you time your button presses. One of the friendly monsters in Monstro Town alludes to a prize if you land more than 30 super jumps in one go, already a tall feat. Do this and he'll give you the Attack Scarf, an incredible accessory for Mario which boosts, well, everything. However, what the game doesn't tell you is that you can get a second piece of equipment by landing 100 super jumps. It sounds like a playground rumor, but this actually gets you an even more overpowered item called the super suit. I've never done this since I don't have the patience for it, but I can tell you the attack scarf already trivializes the game, so the super suit probably just plays the game for you or something. Besides that, there are optional side quests like Melody Bay, which I didn't even touch until my most recent playthrough. Optional minigames like the Beetle Race and Goomba Thumpin', which sucks! And even an entire optional area in Yoster Isle. Here you can saddle up on Yoshi to race against the big bad Boshi to win everyone's right to race freely, but that's just scratching the surface. After doing this, you can wager Yoshi cookies in races, which function as a unique item you can use to summon Yoshi in battle. If you want to go further, however, you can give your cookies to this little fella. After giving him about 30, he'll grow up into the world-famous Big Yoshi. This isn't just good for the meme either, since if you keep giving him cookies after this, he can even give you useful items like Yoshi aids and red essences. You know, just in case any part of this game is still giving you trouble by this point. My favorite optional challenge in the game, though, would probably be Jinx. About 3/4 of the way through the game, you can visit his dojo where you'll find this guy who's fairly tougher than the average turtle, but nothing special. After you beat him, the dojo master Jinx shows up to show you how it's done. You can battle him a total of 3 times, each being tougher than the last. The catch here is that, without exception, every single one of Jinx's attacks are blockable, meaning with a perfect button press, you can reduce all of their damage to 0, even the instant death ones. This makes fighting Jinx more of an endurance test than anything else, since his stats by the end are monstrously high. But if you have the timing down, you can fight him and win at any time. It'll take 20 minutes if you aren't competently leveled, but you can do it. If you beat him a 3rd time, he'll crown Mario Sensei of his dojo and give you the Jinx Belt, an awesome accessory that's not quite as overpowered as the attack scarf, but still good nonetheless. I always make a habit of doing all 3 Jinx fights as soon as I land in Monster Town on each playthrough, because it's just that exhilarating to me. Speaking of subsequent playthroughs, there are plenty of minor things you can do to make each playthrough of Mario RPG feel fresh. I know I said before that this game has relatively little in the way of build customization, but there's nothing stopping you from running funky parties that you haven't used before. Don't want to use Peach since she kind of trivializes the whole experience? Don't have to. I barely used Mallow as a kid due to how frankly crappy of a first impression he gives, but this time I decided to keep him in my party for most of the game to really appreciate his powerful late game abilities. The only caveat to this is that you can't switch Mario out of the front slot of your party, and while I kind of understand why they did this since he's the guy you control and whatnot, I do wish they'd let us run a completely Mario-less party, if only for variety's sake. But let's say you've played Mario RPG so much, you've used every party in the book and still want to experience the game in a new way. Well, friends, it's time to peel back the curtain and reveal one last trick this game has up its sleeve. Swap Glitch. Throughout the game, there are these stars you can pick up that make you invincible like any other Mario game. Taking out enemies this way will actually award you experience points, and if you get enough to level up any of your party members, they'll get those levels after the star runs out. Normally, you can't pause the game while a star is active, but you can pause while jumping to get a star, letting you swap out your party members when you aren't supposed to. If you swap a party member who's about to hit a level where someone else would learn a special move with that party member, the former will learn the latter's special move. It's a bit confusing and not at all an intended interaction, but you can use this to achieve some pretty nutty combinations. Speedrunners use this trick to get powerful special attacks like Shocker and Genoblast on Peach, but you can also just do it to be funny. I used it on my most recent playthrough to put Peach's comeback spell on Mallow, because we do not use Peach in this household. This effectively turned Mallow from a mainly offensive caster with light healing utility to a sorcerer-cleric hybrid. Remember when I said you had to use black magic to change your party members' roles in this game? Yeah. This is what I meant. You might say this shouldn't be counted in the game's favor since it's a glitch, but I say it's in the game so it counts, and we should all abuse the hell out of it before it inevitably gets removed in the remake. But maybe you aren't convinced by all this. Every RPG worth its salt has party customization and side content, and lots of them even have more of that stuff than this game does. And hell, that may be true. But what I think sets Mario RPG apart from other RPGs of the time and since is the immense depth of secrets hidden within it. There's stuff like the lazy shell and the secret path through the forest maze that everyone knows, but I want to devote special attention to the real remote stuff that doesn't help you much, if at all, to experience, but is still pretty cool that it exists. Let's start with an obvious one. In Marymore, there's an item you can buy called the Batub Ring that can only be equipped to Peach. On its own, it does basically nothing, and the item description offers no help as to what this thing's purpose is. What you're supposed to do is buy this egg from this guy in Moleville, and then have Peach use the egg 10 times in battle with the Batub Ring equipped. After this, it'll hatch into the Lamb's Lore, a weird item item that can be used to turn an enemy into a sheep. But it doesn't end there, since if you use the Lamb's Lure 48 times, it then turns into the sheep attack, which is basically a Lamb's Lure that targets every enemy in battle. That's right, you devote all this time and effort into solving this weird-ass puzzle for a see ya. On the bright side, there is a weird glitch where if you use this item in the manager or director fights to get rid of their minions, it'll cause a placeholder text, "Go, world!" to show up. That's honestly the best reason to get this item right there. Speaking of drawn-out quest lines with underwhelming rewards, here we have Knife Guy, who you can find juggling around in Booster Tower after defeating him and his brother, Great Guy. Here he'll offer to play a game where Mario has to guess which hand the yellow ball is in. Most of the items you get from this are pure shit, but if you win this game 12 times in a row, he'll give you the Bright Card, an item with no apparent use until you jump 3 times in this specific spot in Bean Valley. This'll take you to Great Guy's Casino, an exclusive club that you need the Bright Card to get into. It's probably the most bare-bones casino I've ever seen. You can only play blackjack, slots, and a shitty game hosted by Great Guy called Look the Other Way. Winning this game gives you even more useless crap, but if you have the patience to win this game 100 times, he'll give you the Star Egg, a reusable item that deals 100 damage to all enemies. And that's it! I mean, it's marginally more useful than the sheep attack, but when most AoE specials do more and the game loves showering you with powerful items anyway, it's not really a reason to seek this out. This is one of those things you do for bragging rights, and not even really for that. Now that the 2 big ones are out of the way, let's have a quick lightning round of pointless secrets. After you hit the switch in Booster Tower and go to Booster Pass, you'll run into this apprentice who challenges Mario wanted to be promoted to Sniffit 4. Most players will just beat this guy and be on their way, but if you manage to lose to him, he'll actually become Sniffit 4. He'll even be replaced by another apprentice who tries to become Sniffit 5, then another who wants to become 6, then 7, until the 8th guy finally realizes there isn't enough room for another Sniffit and instead relocates to Great Guy's Casino. You have to lose an incredibly easy fight 5 times to even see this stuff, and I don't even have any footage of it happening myself because it's genuinely hard to lose this fight. At the inn in Marymore, you have the option to stay multiple nights for the price of one. Doing this has no benefit, but if you do, the game literally forces you to stand around like an NPC and work off your tab. Late stage capitalism, brought to you by Super Mario. There's this pipe in the Kiro sewers that you aren't supposed to come out of until close to the end of the game, but if you run away from this boo and then jump off of it, you can access it early. Despite this being a completely unintended trick, the game actually acknowledges you being here when you aren't supposed to. There's really nothing here for you except this fight that will kick your ass, but this block that normally has the cricket jam for Frogfucius will instead have a flower. It amazes me that the devs even thought of this. In Land's End, there's this weird cloud dude named Mokura, who can only appear rarely in specific rooms. He's kind of an optional boss, but doesn't pose any real challenge or give you anything interesting for defeating him. He's just kinda there. In this room in Booster Tower, where Booster throws bombs down at you, most players will probably just sit in this little corner to avoid them all. But you can literally just leave, and Booster even has different dialogue for if you do this. It kinda makes me feel like a dick, not gonna lie. There's this gamer toad in the Mushroom Kingdom who will yell at you not to talk to him until he beats his game. You can talk to this toad after Marymore and buy the game off him for 500 coins, and you can actually play it in the menu. Does it get you anything? No. But it's fun.
Here's another one I found out about while editing this video. If you check this fan in Monstro Town, the setting you leave it on will affect the behavior of these pinwheels in Nimbus Land. This would have been great to know before I died and had to fight Birdo again.
If you go to another save file on the save screen and repeatedly refuse to save, then save over your current file, Mario will strike one of a collection of poses depending on how many times you declined. I have no idea how we were supposed to find this one, but I'll take any chance to see Mario do the funny Exor pose again. Bet you didn't know you can stand here. Good luck. Here's a good one. In Moleville, there's a girl sitting on top of a bucket who says she wants a Carbo Cookie. Now, you'll play through the whole game and never see anyone else so much as mention a Carbo Cookie, so where the heck do you get this thing? Well, in town, there's this dude who sells fireworks, which you trade to this girl for a shiny stone. This is as far as most people go, since you need the shiny stone to unlock the Culex fight, but if you take the shiny stone to this completely random girl in the corner of the shop who gives no indication that she's even part of this chain, she'll trade you the Carbo Cookie for your shiny stone. Then you finally give the Carbo Cookie to this girl from the beginning who gives you nothing at first, but gets off her bucket, letting you go down it to Midas Waterfall? What? I didn't even know this point shop existed until I played through the game for this video. An entire shop has just been sitting here this entire time, and I didn't find it until now. This game's almost 30 years old. How am I still finding new things in it? By far the most mind-blowing thing I discovered about this game on my most recent playthrough is in Booster Hill. You go through this area once in the story, chasing after Booster, character in this little minigame where you jump off barrels and snippets to catch up to him. You can come back here later and instead try to collect beetles, which you exchange for coins and frog coins at Beetles R Us in Seaside Town. However, you need to buy a beetle box for that, which the game reminds you of if you try to go to Booster Hill without one. But it still gives you the option to climb Booster Hill even if you can't do the beetle race, and it really makes you go all the way up with nothing but a few barrels and this incredibly basic drum beat. Just as I was laughing to myself about how the game was punishing me for ignoring its warning, I realized that there are flowers?! You can see in the footage how caught off guard I was to see a flower show up after minutes of nothing happening. I have never been so bamboozled by a game, much less in the span of 5 minutes. But I guess it's as the ancient scriptures say, there are many secrets in this game, many of which drive some peeps insane. And that's really part of the appeal of SMRPG. No matter how many times I play this gem, I'll never know all there is to know about it, and that's a beautiful thing. For a game from the Super Nintendo to still find ways to amaze its most devout fans over a quarter of a century later is truly impressive. 10 years from now, I'll probably know things about this game that I don't even know exist. It's like how people meme about how every copy of Mario 64 is personalized. That's this game to me. It's taken on its own mythos, partially aided by its remote status in the Mario canon. In the academic sense, of course. But perhaps, despite all this, you still aren't convinced. Maybe you think this game's legacy and character are served well by the other Mario RPGs, that the secrets I mentioned just aren't all that. And, you know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this game really isn't that impressive, and I'm just letting my nostalgia do the talking. Is Super Mario RPG nothing more than a dated product of its time, outclassed by games that have come out since? In writing this video, I decided my opinions aren't gonna do this question justice, so I took it to my fellow Mario RPG fans. I asked a few friends and acquaintances who like Mario RPG as much as I do the simple question I posed in this video's title. What makes Super Mario RPG special? I noted that I would be coming at the question from a largely contemporary angle, but offered no guidance on how specifically to answer. I simply wanted to know how they felt, whether their thoughts aligned with mine and how closely, to maybe get closer to a singular, satisfying answer. Many of them echoed my sentiments on the game's world and its characters. What makes Super Mario RPG special is that having a complex story that wasn't just Bowser kidnaps Peach, Mario must save Peach was unheard of at the time, and it really brought an extra amount of life to the game. Combine that with the absolute badassery that is the character designs and bosses, and you have what I like to consider the coolest Mario game. I love all the unique characters it introduces that left a lasting impression on all of us for almost 30 years. This is more on the subjective side, but this dang old game just absolutely oozes charm. The visuals, music, dialogue, gameplay, and story sequences just all make you feel good inside. It's a fun adventure with its own special flavor of good old Mario fun that'll for sure make you smile at least once. What makes Super Mario RPG special are the charming towns and characters you encounter along the way. It feels like the world is lived in, and endless secrets and possibilities are hidden away. I always loved when the Mario series did big epic plots for their games. Not only was Super Mario RPG the first game in the franchise to do just that, but it was also the first time Mario's world was really fleshed out. Before Mario RPG, the Mushroom Kingdom wasn't much more than a handful of platforming stages. But then this game came up and turned those platforming stages into a living world, while simultaneously introducing us to some of the best characters in the whole series. Some narrated personal reasons they like the game. The Mario RPGs are my favorite part of the Mario franchise, with the Mario and Luigi games being my favorite game series of all time. I naturally gravitated to Super Mario RPG because of that. It's a unique experience unlike other RPGs, and it's extremely fun too. Lol-playing game, like if you get the reference. Others provided sweeping analyses covering many different facets of the game. SMRPG is the perfect balance of an earnest and wild adventure with the right amount of comic relief, genuine tension, and emotional scenes while never having a dull moment. The game chains memorable moments and set pieces one after another without stopping. It never stops being amazing and knows when to bow to the audience and close the curtain instead of overextending. For me, Mario RPG is special because it's a time capsule of Mario. It leans too heavily on Mario to fit in with Square's other games like Final Fantasy or Chrono Trigger, but its quirkiness is too reliant on its isolated world building to stand alongside even other Mario RPGs. There is no other game out there with Booster or Johnny or Muku Muku or the Smithy Gang or Jabbit or Joffle or Valentina, Tubba Troopa, Gino or Mallow. They're all contained within this peaceful little alternate take on Mario's world. There's no single thing that makes Mario RPG special to me. The characters have awesome, unique designs that you wouldn't see in Mario games today. The music goes from cheery and blissful to adventurous and exciting. The locations and world building are immersive and make you want to defeat the Smithy Gang to protect the lands, and the story, while not as intriguing as other Mario RPGs that came after, still holds up as a grand experience. There are too many things to count that truly make Mario RPG special, from the Forest Maze to Nimbus Land, from Mallow to Geno. It's just overall a fantastic game, and I'm very excited for its remake. Now, ignoring that I basically got a bunch of my friends to write 3 minutes of this video for me, reading these responses changed my understanding of Mario RPG and why I like it so much. I endeavored to check out aspects of the game I'd never touched before or didn't even know existed. I talked to every NPC, even the boring ones, just to experience every bit of this game's writing I could. And as the credits rolled and I watched Geno turn into the letter D for probably the dozenth time in my life, I understood. There was no single answer to the question I'd been seeking all along. Super Mario RPG is a multifaceted gem, and it deserves to be treated like one. It's why so many people outright campaigned for it to be brought back, myself included. So, what makes Super Mario RPG special? Well, it's everything. Shoutouts to my friends who gave their testimonies that I used in the video. They are Super LJ the Original, Pandango1, Nintendonut1, Enigma4125, Hoobadubatron, Supa is a Dingus, Lolico, M. Dragmire, Super10ZX, and Thinginator. Thanks for making this video so much better than it would have been without you.